everyone. I'm Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas and Canadian Gaming Business, here at the Canadian Gaming Summit with Amanda Brewer, Senior Advisor at the Canadian Gaming Association. Thank you so much for being here. You're always kind of my go-to for Canada information because I still am learning.
I think it's awesome that I can be that person for you, Jess, and that, you know, Canada and Ontario is at a place and time right now with its really exciting gaming developments that there's so much to talk about. So
I know.
It's great to be here.
Well, let's just start with the big news that I think we're hoping to hear some sort of more formal announcement this week on Alberta, right?
Yes, Dale Nally, the Minister for Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, is out here. He's the minister who has been tasked with opening up Alberta's iGaming market. He did address the CGA members yesterday at an event, and he was very clear when he said it will be an open market. So that should be a very solid, indication that they're not going to be limiting the number of operators who can come in. And that makes a ton of sense because when you're dealing with an entrenched batch of gray market operators, you can't just invite 10 of them in and hope the other 130 will just magically exit out of the market. So that was really great to hear.
So that's kind of the first formal acknowledgement that they're for sure going to do this, right? I mean, we all are kind of assuming it's going to happen, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember ever reading that he is like, this is what we're going to do now.
No, there hasn't been any official communication coming out of his ministry on the model, the deadline, timing, or any kind of specifics. He did tell us that his consultations are underway, which I know SBC has written about. So they're doing a handful of First Nations consultations and then with the land-based industry as well there. And then at some point in time, with potential operators that would be interested in coming into the market. But they're also doing a lot of fact-finding. So they're out here meeting with AGCO and iGaming Ontario and having a lot of discussions and questions because the hope would be that if Alberta wanted to open its market and open it in a really seamless way, they first and foremost have to find a solution that works for them. And that's not cutting and pasting Ontario's model, but there could be parts of Ontario's model that do work for them. And the nice thing about it is you have a whole bunch of operators who've been working under that structure, under those regulations for a couple of years now. They're familiar with it. So, if Alberta kind of takes some of it and allows operators to come in under similar terms and conditions, then they should have a really happy bunch of compliant operators, which is what you want.
You were so involved with this Ontario launch. Like, what parts of it do you think are areas that might be kind of revisited and tweaked a bit? Is it tax structure? Is it, licensing structure? Is that kind of the areas that people are focusing on?
I think the things that are most cut and dry would be if you look at how AGCO has set up its standards. So they're risk-based. So they're not prescriptive. It's not like, you're an operator and you have to do these 27 things to reach this outcome. That's not what they say. They tell you what the outcome is, and it's up to you to figure out how to meet it. So the operators really like that. That gives them a lot of freedom and flexibility, but they know at the end of the day what they're accountable to the regulator for. So having that kind of approach would really help. And, we always talk about the need for a reasonable tax rate. I mean, a good way to drive operators out is to set the tax rate really, really high. So that something that would be coming in around Ontario's 20% would make operators very happy too. And really, making sure that the ability for operators to qualify to come in is also reasonable. So I think at the end of the day, Ontario did check a lot of those boxes, and I think that's more what the Alberta is looking to do, is just making sure that there's a high level that operators need to meet, because you don't want to lower the bar to get operators in the market, but making sure the conditions are reasonable.
Is the law such that you have to have something like an IGO on the side doing things? Like, would that be the case in Alberta?
So that is the beauty of our conduct and manage, Jessica. It means different things to different people depending on where your feet
are. The magic
standing.
phrase.
Yep. What province your feet are in. So that is something where I actually see Alberta taking perhaps a very different direction. So iGaming Ontario was set up, and this is what our Attorney General and our government felt was required to satisfy those conditions of conduct and manage. Alberta, I am pretty certain will do something a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people who haven't spent a lot of time in Canada don't often realize. These provinces, Alberta's a very different geopolitical beast than Ontario is. So you can't just go from one to the other and have it magically work.
No, and you want provinces to make it work for them. And that's really important at the end of the day. It has to work for Alberta and for Albertans.
Well, and CGA is a national organization, so I'm sure Alberta's a lot of what you're working on, but what else is going on at the association beyond just that?
So in addition to, providing whatever assistance we can to Minister Nally and the government of Alberta, we're also working right now on a set of responsible gambling principles and a code, because as you all know, we've got a piece of legislation in our Senate right now due to the bleed over of Ontario sports betting advertising and some emotional reaction to the volume of sports betting advertising we're seeing right now. And that has caused some senators to talk about all kinds of things, including a potential ban on advertising. So knowing that this industry has to be accountable for its actions, and it does take responsible gambling very seriously. Paul and the board decided it would be a good idea. We already follow operators the standards that AGCO has set out. But just to make sure that people understand how seriously we take this, that there's something that almost supersedes it. So in addition to the regulatory standards, there will be responsible gambling principles that operators will sign on to follow and figure out how to adopt within their organizations, because at the end of the day, this is something that has to transgress everything else that we're doing in the market. Because, as we heard earlier today, the best kind of gaming experience is a safe one. And through the conduct and manage model and the regulatory standards we have in Ontario, we know that the operators who are in this market with licenses are providing the highest responsible gambling standards that exist.
Why do you think this sports betting, and this is a US thing too, people just really zone in on these television commercials. I spoke with Think TV for Canadian Gaming Business Magazine about it.
Yeah.
This bill is kind of potentially addressing that. I go back to, I think it was Dr. Alan Feldman of UNLV was like, we don't really ever have a study that has said the advertising has adversely harmed anyone. So how do you kind of fight against something that there's no real, it's just a feeling?
You captured that perfectly. And, Paul and I have had a lot of conversations where we've said, the reaction is largely an emotional one. And if you actually took a pen and paper, and I know Steve McAllister from Gaming News Canada has done this before and counted the number of advertisements you see during a hockey game, gaming isn't even in the top 3. You see far more fast food or automotive or other types. Gosh, Paul jokes now you see more Ozempic ads on TV than you do sports betting ads.
Yes.
So, but I think, people forget we've had gaming advertising in Canada for decades because of the lotteries.
Yeah.
So what's new to them is the sports betting, and that's a decision made by the broadcasters and the leagues, how many times you're going to see a specific ad during a specific segment. And I think some people also are upset that they see their hockey idols appearing in some of these ads too. So as I said, it's very emotionally connected, but it's something that we think we can hopefully have meaningful discussions on. But we also are aware that there isn't a lot of good North American and even Ontario-specific data that exists. So that's another thing that the association has actually got underway is research. A whole bunch of different prongs into different kinds of research, because in order to have really informed discussions about this very sensitive and emotional topic, we want to be able to have actual Ontario data and research so we can actually demonstrate that actually it's not an overwhelming amount of advertising you're seeing. They're not targeting minors. We're not doing anything that we're not allowed to do. And anyway, so watch this space, because there'll be more to talk about when we get some of this research back.
Yeah, one note on the research, I'm spacing completely on who did it, but I know we wrote up reactions to the sports betting space, and I was speaking with Tom Nightingale about it, and I'm like, this research kind of tells us that people who are not inclined to gamble or sports bet find sports betting ads annoying.
Yeah.
And that is neither surprising nor something, I'm just like, is that really a reason to take an ad off television? I'm sure people who don't want to use Ozempic are pretty tired of Ozempic ads, but is that reason enough to...
100%, but it's you get parents who are upset because their kids are being exposed to it. But I think it's also one of those notions that, there's a large group of stakeholders that come together to get these ads on air. It's not just the operators, it's not just the industry. So that's why, having that kind of meaningful discussion with all the parties at the table, hopefully we can find a path forward.
All right, Alberta's kind of the big thing that everybody is excited about. Anything else on the horizon in Canada, though, that you think, is going to be a topic of discussion this week?
We might have some really exciting news coming out about Alberta. And we're hoping actually other provinces are here, maybe listening with some open minds. And, we can hope to see some further progression of iGaming, legalized, operator-led iGaming in other provinces as well.
They can look at the new Deloitte report maybe and see.
There you go. It's one of the things we're proudest of in Ontario, because if you think about what this industry does, you've got operators who've come in, set up offices, they've hired, they're investing in Ontario. We've got colleges and universities that are creating specific training programs so that they can help produce graduates to work in this industry. And it's all technology based. So it's such a good news story. It ticks a lot of boxes, So it's something that I'm always really happy to talk about. And I know that our Attorney General, Doug Downey, is a big advocate of it as well. He's always happy to come and, give praise to the people who work in this industry, and thanks for all the operators who are here, behaving responsibly and helping to build Ontario into a really great iGaming technology hub for our country.
Well, and it shows you that lotteries and gaming can give back to the community in a different kind of way than just the pure traditional lottery model.
That's it. And if you heard Duncan Honey, who's the CEO of OLG this morning, speak, he said it, this market opening forced them to up their game, but they're seeing fantastic results as they now compete alongside some of the biggest operators in the world. And it did not decimate their business, quite the contrary. They're one of the strongest operators in the market, alongside the likes of, FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM. So, yeah.
All right, Amanda, as always, I've learned a ton. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jess.